My great aunt, throughout her life, researched the Hecker family history and put it into writing. Most of the following information comes from her written records.
Here is the Hecker family coat of arms.
During the early 1800s, around the year 1804, the Russian government extended an invitation to the farmers and artisans in Germany. They asked them to come to Russia and to settle there to help farm the land of the Ukraine. The first settlers of the colony received 162 acres of land. The Russian government helped them to build their first home and loaned them enough money to buy cattle and the necessary farm equipment. Eventually, they were able to and allowed to buy more land. They were allowed to fish in the river, but they had to be careful because of the vicious walruses that live in that part of the country. The soil was rich and fertile. The Germans were able to make a good living. By the year 1811, 51 families were settled on the lands of the Ukraine. The greatest number were farmers. Among these immigrants to the Ukraine was the Hecker family, who settled in the colony of München. The colony was founded in 1810, and the Hecker family were farmers like most of the inhabitants of the colony. Over the years, then, thousands of German families accepted the invitation from the Russian government and made the fertile Ukraine their home. They left the land of their birth in the hope of making for themselves and their children a permanent home in Russia. However, as stories are told, it turned out that the German people were better farmers and were making a better living than the Russians. Because of this, the German boys were forced to enlist in the Russian armies. The Russian government took away the harvest from the German people. They stole their livestock and frowned on their religion. In the course of time, the promises and the privileges the Russian government initially gave the German settlers were either forgotten or revoked altogether. Word reached Russia that there was land available in South and North America. The German people sent missionaries to check out the land. On return, the missionaries then decided to leave Russia for America. Those who still had some land and property disposed of it, and those who had no property had no problem at all to get ready and leave. Therefore, within less than 100 years, the children and grandchildren of the German pioneers who colonized the vast and wild land of the Ukraine left again the land of their birth for the United States, Canada, and South America. Among these many thousands were again the Hecker family, their relatives, and their neighbors. They went by way of the Volga River with an agent who would be their guide to the United States. The route they took was leaving the Caspian Sea, and then they hit the Atlantic Ocean to New York by ship. The name of the ship is not yet known, but it was a freighter converted into a troop ship for families. The families were crowded into quarters. Many were seasick, and some even died. In the colony of Munchen, South Russia was born George Hecker on April 23, 1858, and his wife Franziska Coes on August 26, 1865. They were married on January 15, 1882. After farming in Munchen almost 10 years, they left Russia for the United States in the company of other families and relatives. They arrived in Dickinson, North Dakota on May 13, 1892. From hearsay, it is believed that George Hecker worked on the railroad for the next few years, until the spring of 1896, when they homesteaded in Dunn County, about 22 miles northwest of Dickinson, next to their sister and brother-in-law Carl and Magdalene. In the spring of 1896, Mr. and Mrs. George Hecker bought rights to the homestead, Section 4, Range 97 West, Township 141 North, in the southern part of Dunn County. Hearsay is that the United States government gave them 160 acres of land, but they had to live on it for 5 years before they could own it. Later, they bought 4 quarters and a half-quarter section of land more. Eventually, they owned 840 acres, and they farmed and ranched for 33 years. At the time, the only building on the homestead when they arrived was a one-room rock house. Its roof was made of tree branches, straw, and mud. Later, a wood roof was put on the house. Around 1904, George and Francesca built a new rock house on the homestead. In the fall of 1929, Mr. and Mrs. George Hecker retired from the farm and settled to Dickinson, North Dakota. On May 6, 1931, George passed away and was laid to rest in St. Joseph Cemetery. His wife, Francesca, followed him in death on August 26, 1932, and was laid to rest beside him. The youngest son born to George and Francesca was Mike, who bought the homestead from his parents a year after his marriage to Veronica Lantz. Mike and Veronica lived on the homestead for 52 years, until January 2, 1980, when Mike died. They had many memorable experiences. They saw bumper crops and poor crops, as well as total failures. They saw droughts, dust storms, and grasshopper plagues, hot summers and cold winters. They never became discouraged or lost faith in divine providence and the fertile soil of North Dakota. They remained on the farm where they raised the third generation of Heckers. The marriage of Mike and Veronica Lance Hecker was blessed with 6 living children. The homestead farm that George and Francesca Hecker came to in 1896 still stands with the old rock house now being used as a chicken coop. The rock buildings have been kept up and are still being used today. A new rock house was built in 1904, and in the summer of 1969, a new house was built yet again. The farm was bought by Mike and Veronica's youngest son, Ben, in 1980, who in 1988 is still farming and ranching on the land. Ben's mother, Veronica, lives on the farm with him. She has lived there 59 years. The homestead has provided the third generation of Hecker family with many blessings for a total of 92 years, from 1896 to the current day. And the Hecker family is now moving into the 6th generation. Interviewing my mom was an enjoyable experience. My mom grew up in North Dakota and spent a lot of time on my great Uncle Ben's farm. She had a lot of opportunities to speak with Martha and get a first-hand account of her experience growing up. As I was growing up, she brought me and the rest of my family to the farm where we were able to see the original house my family moved into. My favorite place was the old potato cellar, which is still holding potatoes today.